Hello and welcome back to the Grandmaster division of the Intermezzo Championship. After the first batch of games has finished, my position isn't really that great. I have only 2 points. The gap of points to the third position, which I need to finish on if I want to stay in the league, is already quite big. So I need to have some good results now in the second batch of games, ideally at least 2 wins, probably even more, in order to stay in the league. And the first chance of getting those good results I have in the game that we are going to take a look at today, which will be a game against Gandin and Wolves. So both opponents who I ideally want to try finish before, and win would be really important in that game. And now, without further ado, let's take a look at the game. In this game, I'm playing the second position, and first of all, we can take a look at the leaders and wonders. And we can see that there is not really a lot of culture synergy in H3. We have no Chaplin, no Marlene, no Fleming, also no Hollywood. So going for a lot of movies or libraries maybe doesn't have the biggest payoff. We have some lab leaders with Sid Meier, Einstein, and Marie Curie, but there's also no spaceflight. There is the Internet and the Manhattan Project, though. We have Pierre together with the Internet, so that could be a potentially big combination in H3. We have Gandhi and Churchill for the military as well as the Manhattan Project. In H2, we have Suez Canal and Cook, so there's some big colonization payoff. Apart from the Suez Canal, there are some strong wonders missing, like Ocean Liner, Harvard, and Railroad. We have James Watt is there. We have Shakespeare as the one big culture leader in the game. Then Maria Theresa, Nobel, and 2 military action leaders with Napoleon and Catherine. In H1, we have 1 military action leader with Jan Žižka. Barbarossa and Nostradamus can help with the strength. There's Columbus, Eleanor, Isabella for potential colonization strategy, and also Michelangelo is there together with maybe the Machu Picchu. And then the wonders, we have Forbidden City, but no St. Peter's Basilica, Great Wall, but no Amici Castle, and Universitas, but no Silk Road. Gandin is in first position, and he starts the game with an interesting choice. Already in the last game, he went for Caesar, and now he is going for Caesar again. But he would have had some very interesting alternatives. Could have grabbed Pyramids, could have grabbed Confucius, but he wants to maybe go for a bit of an aggressive game, maybe has some hopes of getting Colossus, there's some colonization payoff, and so at the end he is actually willing to go for Caesar here. Caesar is a bit of a counter to Confucius, is a bit of a counter to Boudica, so definitely understandable, but still of course quite a big price to pay to maybe not just take Pyramids or maybe Confucius. Now it's my turn, and when I have the choice to take Pyramids and Confucius with my first pick, I think I just have to do it, even though, of course, playing Confucius with Caesar in the game can be a bit tricky if the event deck flips very quickly, but still, he will provide me some very nice value. I could have taken Urban Growth, but I think Confucius still just is quite a strong leader. I really have to make sure that I can maybe get some ways to increase my strength relatively early, and hopefully then playing behind Caesar with Confucius will end up being fine. Now it's Wolf's turn, and he goes for the Colossus, which I think makes a lot of sense. With Caesar and Confucius in the game, the event deck is about to flip very early. The Colossus will help with strength events and also with colonies, which there is a great payoff for in this game. So I think definitely a very good choice taking the Colossus over cards like Engineering Genius or Library, and he can take the Colossus even together with a copy of Urban Growth. Now it's Gandin's turn. He didn't take the Pyramids, but he is still getting a nice wonder. Maybe also something that he anticipated. He is even getting that wonder together with the Engineering Genius. Goes for Caesar and then builds his third mine. Now it is my turn. I will go for a relatively normal turn, electing Confucius, building my mine, increasing my population, then taking the stockpile. If a 2 resource development is revealed, it can allow me to finish the pyramids a turn earlier, so I think the stockpile is the best yellow card here to take, especially after already having built the third mine. So the rich land isn't guaranteed to have a nice target. I draw 2 events, a colonization card and a reign of terror. It will be a bit of a tough call what to seed at my next turn. Wolves will complement the set of leaders, which will basically guarantee that the event deck will flip very quickly. He goes for Sun Tzu, has the Colossus, can maybe find some beneficial events for him, and then will just start with building the lab with the urban growth and increases his population. Now it's Gandin's turn. He interestingly doesn't seed, so maybe he didn't draw an event or no event that he would like to seed. He increases his population, builds a step of the library, builds another step of the library, doesn't want to build a second lab, can maybe spend more civil actions effectively when he goes for it like that, and also has a free population while not being in consumption, and then he has one civil action left, and it takes the Britain Circuses. There's Pierre in the game, so getting that for one civil action is certainly not bad. Now it is my turn. I was not brave enough to see the Reign of Terror here. I will actually take the Knights this turn, but I have no tactic for them yet, and so I just seeded a colonization card, which also isn't ideal. It could help me defending at some point, it could help me maybe winning a colony, but still I want to seed, I want to get it early signs from Confucius, so I seeded that colonization card into the deck. The Development of Warfare is revealed, which I will take. It will mean that I will delay my lab by a little bit, but I think in this situation it's not too bad, because on one hand I get some additional signs already from Confucius, and on the other hand I have a strong economical wonder that I want to finish early, so I think it's quite nice to take this warrior here. Then I said I take the knights, there's Sun Tzu in the game, and yeah, I think it's just a card that I need to grab. Of course I don't know which tactic wolves will upgrade, but if I don't take the knights and he upgrades the knights tactic, it's just quite bad. So I take the knights here, and then I have still 2 civil actions left. I could just take even more cards, but I think I want to be a bit civil action efficient, not just spending all of my 4 civil actions to take some cards, so I built one step of the pyramids. One of the 2 developments that requires a free population is already out, so I think it's fine to not have a free population and stay out of consumption for one more turn. And then with the last civil action, I think it's a bit of a decision between the warfare and the rich land just offering some very nice economical benefit, maybe allowing me to go for quicker farmer mine upgrades at some point, while the warfare makes me maybe even more safe with Gandin and with Caesar and Sun Tzu being in the game. Maybe just having that warfare around and being able to get the additional strength in military action could be quite nice. On the other hand, I have already the knights who will take some signs, and at the end I actually went with the rich land. I do think it's a fine choice, but maybe with wolves having Colossus, Sun Tzu, and Gandin having Caesar, now the Britain Circuses, there's certainly the potential that it will end up being an aggressive game, and so maybe just having the warfare in hand could be an interesting alternative. But yeah, I at the end made a decision for the rich land, and that also can turn out to be quite a valuable card for me. I draw 2 events, the call to arms and the tactic. At the next turn I again have to think about if I want to seed one of those strength events. I certainly don't want to seed the phalanx tactic. I was very happy to see this tactic. Wolf seeds, the development of agriculture is revealed, and he actually goes for Barbarossa. Barbarossa has some big potential to go for a big either strength or colonization game, so he's willing to pay 2 civil actions to get him. He actually reveals already the legion tactic, switches to Barbarossa, activates him one time, and then increases his population, do not have an uprising issue, takes the warfare, so he is really setting up for a bit of a strength push, is already at 6 strength, will at some point get the Colossus, has the warfare. But he also paid a bit of a price for that. He hasn't built his 3rd mine yet, is only on 1+2 resource production, so it will maybe take some time until he can actually finish the Colossus, and let's see if going for that early strength push will provide some value for him. Gandin seeds and opens the development of crafts. He finishes the library, increases his population 2 times, and then takes the breakthrough. Now it is my turn. As you can see, I seed the call to arms into the deck. I just thought that there is definitely the danger that I could get hit by a strength event. I will actually go for a phalanx tactic that will temporarily make me actually the strongest, but nonetheless there will be the risk that I will be the weakest, and I do think losing a population, especially when a strength race is going on, is quite a big cost. Losing some civil actions could be quite bad as well, but at least I have the pyramids. Maybe it doesn't hurt me as much as my opponents, and there is at least a chance that I will be able to avoid it, and I wanted to get the additional signs from Confucius, so I seed the call to arms into the deck. The development of trade routes is revealed. I need to do some things to get out of corruption. First of all, I will finish the pyramids and get to go up to 5 civil actions, and then I will develop the knights, increase my population 2 times, build one, reveal the tactic, being the strongest, not being in danger of an aggression, and yeah, so I think that is just a relatively straightforward, a clean turn. Instead of finishing the pyramids, I could have also taken a card or something, but I'm not sure if maybe I would have actually had some corruption issues then, and also just getting the civil action up and running I think is stronger than taking any of those cards. Now it's Wolf's turn, and he seeds an event. The development of religion is revealed. He can take the free religion, he can actually finish the Colossus already this turn. There were the development of trade routes and the development of crafts revealed, so that's now enough. He goes up to 8 strength, develops the warfare and takes the engineering genius. So he again makes sure to be the strongest, which is certainly an indicator that there could be some strength events coming. Gandin, as the weakest, isn't willing to see it. Instead, he offers the trade routes agreement to wolves, wants to use food as resources, but wolves rejects. And as he is Caesar, he can actually give it another try, offer the pack to me again, but I also don't accept at the end. Maybe I could have accepted, because in a strength race I do think population can be more important than additional resources, and so being able to use resources, food could potentially be interesting for me, but I actually did some calculations on now that the developments are all gone. You can do a bit of calculation how much food you will have until the end of the age, and if there is no good harvest or something revealed, then my population should actually, or my food will just be enough to get one more population out before the age will end, and so at the end I didn't want to accept this pact and rejected it instead. Gandin will go for the knights, has to respond to the strength push from wolves, will develop the knights, increases his population, builds one, builds another one, and has actually the medieval army tactic, goes up to 11 strength out of the sudden. I'm the weakest player, and then with the last civil action, Gandin takes the iron, is now at a good amount of strength, has at the next turn enough science to go for the iron, meaning that he maybe has just stabilized in strength right now and can then maybe focus on getting some economy going. I was still somewhat happy to see that he didn't go for Nostradamus here, because I see that a call to arms, I have the Reign of Terror in hand, and Nostradamus will be a very helpful leader for me to avoid being the weakest, as there definitely could be some bad events coming. So instead of Iron, Gandin maybe could have grabbed Nostradamus, but he instead wants to leave himself open for another leader, and for example Jan Žižka or some of those transitional leaders could turn out to be quite strong leaders for him, so he is willing to give up on Nostradamus. Now it is my turn, and the question is, do I want to see it? I'm the weakest right now. I will actually go for Nostradamus, and at the end I made the decision to not see it here, because I could just get hit by something bad. Also the rebellion would at the moment hit me, but not after my turn, because the development of religion I can take at the beginning of my turn. And also I will get Nostradamus, and I don't know if I will draw another event. I will actually spend one military action to build another unit, so while I don't get a science from Confucius for seeding it, it might very well mean that I will maybe at least get 3 culture at a future turn, having kept this event in hand, so I made a decision to not push. I will take the free religion, I will increase my population and build another knight, meaning I also don't go for my second lab yet. I take Nostradamus, I elect him. Thanks to his bonus, I'm actually not one of the 2 weakest, so the call to arms at the moment wouldn't affect me at all. And then there's the question on what to spend my civil actions on. I still have 3 left. There are some cards that I could take. Taking one of those yellows is a bit expensive. The frugality, the use of that will be somewhat questionable. Reserves, of course, can always be fine, but it would also be quite expensive. I could maybe think about the irrigation, like getting some food production soon, and then maybe having more population available. At the end, I made the decision to take the monarchy, actually, because now I have spent a lot of resources and food, basically everything, meaning at the next turn, if there is no event reveal that will change that, I can maybe do a revolution, and afterwards I will be in 6 civil and 3 military actions. I have my government form already up and running, and the 3rd military action is actually also quite useful for Nostradamus to have higher chances to draw an event every turn. So with that, I thought getting into monarchy is quite nice. I didn't have any economy upgraded, but at least I have a very healthy amount of civil and military actions, and so I felt like that maybe could be the best improvement that I can do on the next turn. And then I still have 1 civil action left, and I made a decision to take the alchemy to maybe have the option to go for some upgrades at some point if I think it is a good decision. Could have also gone for a printing press. There's Shakespeare, but apart from him, not a lot of cultures not in the current position, with wolves having done some sacrifices to get stronger, Gandin being at 11 strength. I think it would just be too greedy, and maybe being able to just upgrade the 1 lab to alchemy could also already be fine. I draw 1 event, which is a blunder. 1 card, sadly no event. Wolf seeds, and no strength event is revealed actually, instead the immigration. So if I would have seeded a Reign of Terror at my turn, I would have missed out on that. Now I am part of that and get an additional population. wolvs uses the additional population that he's getting to build a third mine, takes the reserves, the irrigation, develops the irrigation already, is not using Barbarossa, so for now stays the weakest. Also, of course, I see what my opponents seed, and with Nostradamus and Wolf seeded the Barbarians here into the deck, it's likely that he won't be one of the players with the most culture, so that is a relatively safe event. And Gandin continues with seeding events. He first puts the border conflict in, Call to Arms is revealed, I'm not part of that. Wolves will lose 2, Gandin 1 civil action, and then he seeds again the Knowledge of the Ancients, so he puts some event into the deck. The Inhabited Territory is revealed, which I bid 3 for, mainly to push the price for my opponents, but I thought that maybe it could be fine to win it for 2 units, but I at the end just push the price a little bit, maybe make it look like I have a defense card in hand, and I thought it's very, very likely, especially with the big colonization payoff later in the game, that one of my opponents will bid more for that. At the end, Gandin is able to win it for a knight and 2 cards, so I think that's a nice deal for him. And then he rebuilds the knights. Knight is again at 11 strength. Actually builds the third farm, which is interesting, but it already will immediately at the next turn allow him to increase his population. And also there's Jan Žižka coming, so with him maybe having on 3 farms could actually also generate him some value for the military. He's also taking 2 copies of Frugality, so with being able to increase his population at the next turn, and then in the Frugality maybe will be able to get some population out relatively quickly. Now it is my turn, I'm not the weakest, I'm Nostradamus, I seed the Reign of Terror into the deck, not completely without risk. There's certainly the chance that my opponents will find a way to get stronger, but when we take a look at Wolf Civilization, he's very low in science, doesn't have the most free population available, he will soon lose 2 yellow tokens, so I thought maybe it will be a bit tricky for him to get stronger. I can copy the medieval army tactic to at least get 1 more strength, and so I was hoping that I will be able to avoid being the weakest. The event revealed is the defense card that I've seeded into the deck, so our players gain 1 science. I could have played out a turn, for example gone for the alchemy or something, but I do think I can't spend my civil actions too effectively here, so I just did a revolution here, start drawing more cards immediately, and at the next turn having 6 civil actions to work with, and thanks to the Confucius event, maybe at the next turn I can go for an alchemy upgrade or something. I then don't copy the tactic yet. I thought maybe it's better to get my draws earlier, maybe already getting some event draws, and then at the next turn maybe I can copy to the medieval army tactic, which should still be H1, so I can still hopefully use H1 draws in order to copy the tactic. I draw an Enslave, an Enable Trade Agreement, and a Heavy Cavalry, sadly no event. Wolf seeds and the developed territory is revealed. He pushed the Uncertain Borders, which surprised me a bit because I felt like at the moment he is actually at the risk of being the weakest for at least a little while longer. So him pushing the Uncertain Borders really was a bit of a surprise to me, and I was curious to see on how he wants to get stronger now very quickly. Another colony is revealed. I don't want to lose a lot of strength, so I pass on that one. Wolves at the end is able to win it for just a warrior, so that's definitely a nice deal for him. Helps him with his population situation, and also gives him enough science to actually go for the swordsman directly this turn, which might help him to get stronger. He goes for the swordsman, uses Barbarossa, and then goes for 1 upgrade, and that's all that he can do. So he did indeed get a bit stronger, but at the moment he is actually still the weakest, so yeah, still in danger of getting hit by a lot of those strength events that are actually in the deck. We have Border Conflict, Uncertain Borders, Reign of Terror, Barbarians, and only 1 non-strength related event with the Knowledge of the Ancients. Now it's Gandin's turn. He is the strongest, so if he has some events to seed, he probably wants to push. And he indeed pushes. The event revealed are the Barbarians, and that is actually one of the events that is unfortunate for him. He could have now won the Border Conflict, could have won the Uncertain Borders, but instead the Barbarians are revealed, and with me, only having seeded once with Nostradamus, Gandin has still the most culture and will actually lose a population, so a bit unfortunate for him here. He doesn't have a second event to push, he will just lose a warrior. Maybe that's not too bad for him with now going for Žižka. He wants to maybe have more units in the cavalry anyway, so he can now go for Žižka, making him the strongest, going up to 5 culture production, which is a bit worrying, and then he also goes for irrigation first, noticing that this is still a very military heavy game where maybe going for food production first is more important than going for resource production first. At my turn, I can't push an event, but I can offer the naval trade agreement. I give Gandin an additional colonization force. I will get 2 blue tokens in exchange. Both of my opponents have 1 colony up to this point. Now both have a colonization force of 1. I just was hoping that maybe I can, if they have... I mean, first of all, I actually know that there won't be any colony coming here, but actually this one event that Gandin seeded at his turn is the strategic territory, so for a while this colonization bonus won't do anything for Gandin, and later on, if there are maybe some colonies coming, then I was hoping that with both of them having a colonization force of 1, maybe they can make each other pay a little bit more, and so I thought offering this pact should be fine. Now it is my turn. And yeah, I first of all will copy the tactic and go up to 10 strength. Also, I will play the stockpile at the beginning of my turn, because if I don't get the additional food out of the stockpile now, I will be stuck on 3 food at the next turn, and now I can either increase my population now or just be at 4 food at the next turn, which will still be enough to increase my population. Then I still have 5 civil actions. I will actually build another knight, going up to 12. I know that all of those strength events is coming. Wolves could do another Barbarossa activation during his turn, and so I just really want to make sure to be a bit stronger, use my military actions right now while we are still in H1. Sadly, that means, though, that with having no event in hand, again at the next turn I won't be able to seed with Nostradamus. Then, with having built another unit, I really need this theology, otherwise at the next turn I will have an uprising issue. And then I have 4+1, so not enough science to go for both alchemy and theology, unless I actually go for the alchemy for 1 upgrade, so I get a little bit of a production going at least. Maybe at some point I will be able to actually build an alchemy, and then I have still exactly 2 science at the next turn to go for the theology. And with my last 2 civil actions, I could of course take the iron, maybe the code of laws, but I'm just too low in science. At the next turn I have to commit to the theology. It will take a long while until I can go for the iron. There are a lot of strength events coming. I think it's just not the right situation to go for the iron. It means that it will be discarded, meaning that both I and Wolves are still waiting for coal, but I'm playing in front of him. I can maybe take the coal away and get the first copy, and so I just thought there are way more important things than securing a copy of iron at that point, and instead I went for the cultural heritage. As said, I will be very low in science, and I think getting the 2 additional science of the cultural heritage will be very important. I could have also thought about the urban growth when I had the next turn want to go for theology, but I felt additional science is even more valuable than additional resources in this situation. Sadly, I don't get any draws. H2 starts. Wolves draws 3 cards with the Colossus. He doesn't seed, instead he offers an open borders agreement to Gandin, which of course I was not too happy to see. Then he uses Barbarossa to go for another swordsman. He makes sure to get stronger than Gandin, but it will come at a cost, because now he's an uprising issue. He actually also goes for the cartography, interestingly without having any knowledge about colonies, because yeah, he hasn't seeded any himself. Maybe he has already drawn some with the Colossus now, but still an interesting choice, investing the remaining science into the cartography. But he has already 1 colony, and if he at the end is the one who gets the Suez, he has the engineering genius, then it could be very big for him. So he makes this investment, also of course making him even stronger, but in order to go for this 4th swordsman, Wolves has to do a sacrifice now and actually destroy the mine that he built not that long ago. So he is willing to do some committive moves, but of course he knows that the uncertain borders are coming, and even more strength events that he doesn't have knowledge about, so he might very well get rewarded for that. The problem is that Gandin has enough food to relatively soon, maybe if goes for a food upgrade now, build a 4th knight, which again will put him above Wolves in strength. Now it's Gandin's turn. He knows that he is the weakest, he has knowledge about some strength events, so instead he doesn't go for seeding, and instead he goes for an iron upgrade. Before he will go for a food upgrade, but even without a food upgrade he has exactly enough food to get another population out at the next turn, so instead he rather starts the science production, and with his last civil action he will then take an urban growth. Now it is my turn, and I sadly again can't seed, and the first thing that I really have to do is to go for theology. I don't have enough resources to build one directly, so I have to go for an upgrade. At least that is already enough to get me out of corruption. And then there are quite some cards available in the row. I think a card that I definitely have to take is this breakthrough for 1 civil action. It's just too good of a deal. I need science that much, so I think that's just something that I have to take. And then there are some cards. First of all, there's the first copy of Rifleman and a copy of Swordsman. If I take neither of those, then, wolvs has Swordsman. Gandin also still at some point needs an infantry tech. So if I don't take the Rifleman, then it could very well be that there's a chance that I miss out on them. Also, having the Rifleman early could be interesting if the knowledge of the ancients is revealed soon, maybe before the strength events are coming. Then having the Rifleman in hand could mean that already at the next turn, with the knowledge of the ancients, I could develop the Rifleman, go for some upgrades, and have the ability to again increase my strength to avoid getting hit by those strength events. So I could take the Rifleman. But there's also an early coal in the row, which could be nice to have, being able to build some economy at some point. The problem is, even with the knowledge of the ancients, I can't go for it at the next turn. It's a big science investment. I might need to rather build some military, and so I think it's just too expensive to take the coal here for 3, even though, of course, wolvs is also waiting for it maybe, but he has even less science than I because he has no cultural heritage. Or actually, we have the same because he has already 2 saved up, so he has a similar science situation than I have, but for him it's also very difficult to get into coal, so I thought that at this point the coal is not that valuable in short term that I'm willing to pay 3 civil actions for it. And as another alternative, instead of taking maybe Rifleman or coal, I could of course also take some more yellow cards, because if they're in a game where all players have a weak economy, yellow cards gain on importance, because what they have are offering is just better than when you have already some strong production going. So I could, for example, take the swordsman to maybe have the ability to go for some upgrades or something, which could already be useful at the next turn even without the knowledge of the ancients. And then I could take a rich land together with it. It could be one example of what I could do. Or I could now spend 3 civil actions to take another copy of breakthrough. So I think I really have a lot of options here. Passing on both Rifleman and Swordsman is a bit risky, but at this point I also don't know if I will need those for tactic, and investing another amount of science into one of those techs will also lock me really down on a low amount of science. And wolvs at least has already Swordsman, so I was hoping that maybe I will get another shot at getting a copy of Rifleman. I didn't really want to invest into Swordsman just for 2 additional strength and invest 4 science into it, and at the end I just actually took this copy of breakthrough because I think all of the players are really low in science, so getting 3 additional science in this game is extremely valuable, and so I just wanted to secure this copy of breakthrough to myself. Of course, maybe those copies of breakthrough might be stuck a little while in my hand until I can actually develop a tech, but I was still thinking that the science will be very useful eventually. So a bit of a tough decision, but I do think it was fine at the end committing to the 3 science. I draw some cards. Sadly, again, no event. I was a bit unhappy about it because it could be nice to maybe not fall too much behind Gandin in culture, but sadly I don't have the option to seed now at the next turn. It's wolv's turn. He seeds the arms industry into the deck, and he gets a bit unfortunate here, basically similar to Gandin, who also pushed when he was the strongest, and then the barbarians were revealed. Now wolvs pushes, the reign of terror could have been revealed, border conflict, uncertain borders. Instead, the knowledge of the ancients are revealed, and with that event being revealed, I felt maybe having taken the Rifleman could have been nice, because I thought wolvs probably will seed now and maybe one of the strength events will already be out. But if the knowledge of the ancients is revealed first and all of the other strength events remain in the deck, then I felt like having the Rifleman in hand maybe could have been interesting. Could have been important potentially. All players gain 2 science. I think for every player the science is extremely valuable. wolvs is actually willing to take the coal here. Maybe he doesn't have that much else to do, and at some point the coal will be valuable. In 2 turns he can maybe go for an upgrade. He doesn't increase his strength for now, meaning that now Gandin can go for another knight, overtake him again. Potentially wolvs has to be at the fear that I can seed then, but luckily for him I can't push for now. Gandin won't seed, wants to get stronger, builds a knight, is now at 17 strength, takes the breakthrough and a copy of Rifleman. Now it is my turn again. I can't use my politics phase, really. I will increase my population to get out of corruption. And then it's a bit of a tough turn, because what do? I could just take a bunch of cards, but there are not that many cards that are actually very valuable for me right now. I could secure myself a copy of cannons, but it would be somewhat expensive, and very likely I won't really need it in the near future, as it is maybe a bit too expensive to invest into, especially without having a tactic for it yet. I thought about doing something like going for navigation, but it also felt like a very big science investment. And at the end, I thought even about destroying something like a mine in order to build another warrior, because at Wolf's turn I would be the weakest, and I know that all of the events are some strength events. Reign of Terror would be very annoying, Uncertain Borders would be annoying, Border Conflict would be annoying. So I thought it could be quite valuable to get stronger. I could destroy something, build a warrior, I could go for navigation, later cultural heritage, go gain 2 additional strength from that, maybe have a bigger shot at winning the strategic territory, maybe also throwing my hat in the ring to potentially get the Suez Canal at some point. But at the end, I found another option, which is also not ideal, which is definitely not perfectly clean, but I at the end liked it the most, and that is actually going for the organized religion. And when I first thought about this turn, I thought that probably I don't want to do it, but then I realized that I can actually play this turn in a way that I'm fine with, because out of habit, or out of, just because I normally do it this way, I developed the organized religion with the breakthrough 1, because that's the card that I want to get rid of my hand quickest. But when I develop it with the breakthrough 1, then I am missing 1 science to get into coal at the next turn, which I think could be important to leave myself open towards. But I can actually use the breakthrough 2 first, and then I have enough, and with that I at the end felt this option could be best. I can develop the organized religion, go for an upgrade, build a warrior. With 15 plus 3 strength, I should have very good chances to not get hit by any of those strength events, and I have my happy face is fully covered. It's of course awkward upgrading from theology to organized religion, but at least I have this more efficient happy face solution up and running now, and in contrast to, for example, developing something like navigation, as said, now with the cultural heritage, I have enough science to get into coal already at the next turn. So I felt like that might be the best option. I have now still 1 civil action left. I think any of those cards is not really that important for me, so I just played a cultural heritage. I get 2 draws, and finally I get some events, the international agreement and the historic territory. We have to see how willing I am to push those, but at least I have the option to push. Wolves goes for another farm upgrade. At this point, he doesn't really have a nice way to make sure to not be the weakest. He could play the reserves, go for another Barbarossa activation to Swordsman, but then he's hit 17 strength, and that's not enough to not be the weakest. Maybe Gandin would need to be stronger, but he could just go for Bread and Circuses. So at this point, Wolves just decides to accept being the weakest, which is of course not great. He really did some sacrifices to be in the strength race, and now being the player who potentially loses those events at the end is certainly not great, but at least at the next turn he can maybe start going for a coal upgrade. Now it's Gandin's turn, he is the strongest, and now he will get rewarded for being the strongest. The uncertain borders are revealed, and Gandin wins a yellow token, Wolves loses 1. I'm at least not part of that event. Gandin takes the constitutional monarchy, gets out of corruption with going for some upgrades, and gets a bit of economy going. Maybe at the next turn could even think about doing a revolution if he wants to. Doesn't take the cannons, interestingly, either indicating that he has already a card in hand for a tactic where he doesn't need the cannons, or maybe he just didn't have the hand space and found at the end that the constitutional monarchy is the more important card to take. Also, as you can see, he really starts getting a culture lead. He's actually the one who has now the most resource production already. I at least have the more civil action, so that's a bonus that I'm having, but I felt like Gandin might get a bit of an edge here, and soon he might be able to get into Conmon. I actually seed here the international agreement. That of course can backfire, but I just wanted to start seeding with Nostradamus, and there's certainly a chance at least that I will at the end be able to be the strongest, so I was at the end willing to push. And the Reign of Terror is revealed. Wolves will lose a population, so he's really getting hit by events now. Losing the population and the yellow token will actually mean that he has an uprising issue, but he can fix it with increasing his population. And as you maybe noticed, there is actually a copy of Coal on the row available. It's the second copy. I think I'm not that much in danger for denial, as Gandin has a very full hand, but I just think maybe getting the production going as quickly as possible could be important. So I grab the Coal, I develop it with the breakthrough, and I go for one upgrade, and with the last civil action I take the cannons. So a relatively clean turn, securing myself that military tech. Missing out on the selective breeding, but when we take a look at my opponent's civilization, wolves have irrigation, Gandin has irrigation, so I think in this context it's maybe fine to wait for the second copy. Maybe you could argue that I should value going for selective breeding first more than the coal, as the population might be important, but I think now some strength events are out. In the next event deck so far, apart from actually the Crusades have been seeded by Gandin, international agreement by me, so there are some strength events coming where maybe having some population could be helpful. But I also felt like getting some resource production done now also could end up being really important. I draw 3 cards, 3 wars actually. That's definitely a special draw. Not sure if I had something like that already in H2. So yeah, I have some military options now. Wolf seeds, he knows he is the weakest, didn't have knowledge about the border conflict, but he maybe wants to get another event into the deck, and that event is Vast Territory 2. He did a commitment to cartography, so I think it's very important for him that there is a card coming where maybe having invested into the cartography will pay off, so he is willing to push, but he gets hit by another strength event, so that series of event during that turn cycle is really a very big setback for him, getting hit by border conflict, reign of terror, and uncertain borders. But he was the one who at the end lost the strength race, despite him putting really some effort into it. So yeah, that certainly makes it that he probably is at a disadvantage at the moment now. But let's see how he can recover from it. He will first of all start with going for a coal upgrade, takes the urban growth for some additional resources, not willing to take the cavalryman here, also not the organized religion, maybe it just thinks he needs to get some additional value out of the yellow cards. Gandin this turn cancels the naval trade agreement, which I think at the end worked out fine for me. Gandin, there was not a single colony revealed at the time when this pact was active. Then Gandin goes for the Suez Canal. He has already a colony. I was not happy to see it, especially in a low economy game. I feel like being able to build a Suez Canal can really give you a big boost, especially if you have a strong colony. It can fix multiple areas at once, which is extremely strong. I mean, Gandin is actually the player who has maybe the best economy already ongoing, and now getting the boost of the Suez could be quite strong. I was really hoping that maybe he doesn't have the strongest event available to colonize with the Suez Canal. And then with the last civil action, he will build a step that gets him out of corruption. At the next turn, he can finish the Suez Canal, and also will have enough science to go for the Conmun, and thanks to the breakthrough, he will still, also after developing it, have a somewhat fine amount of science left. Now it's my turn, and there's a big question if I want to push or not. I'm Nostradamus, I get some additional culture for it, and at least the event deck has just flipped, so if I seed the historic territory now, it will take a while until it will be revealed, but especially also later in the game, it can of course be quite a swingy event. At least I have knowledge about it, I can maybe somewhat prepare for it, but it could be a bit tricky. Also Gandin of course has the Suez Canal, where he could get some additional bonuses. And no, maybe it's questionable, but at the end I actually made a decision to push. To get the additional culture from Nostradamus, not fall too much behind Gandin, I will actually switch to a new leader this turn, especially with the event that will now be revealed. Without pushing, I wasn't completely certain if I should go for Napoleon or not, but with pushing, it came a bit more clear to me. The strategic territory is revealed. I was willing to bid 1 unit and 2 cards, but wolvs is able to win it with his navigation, or with his cartography. Is now able to win the colony for swordsman and 2 H1 colonization cards, which I think is a good deal for him. And then during my turn, as you can see, I have a lot of civil actions, but with being low in science and not having the most resources yet, I just need to invest my civil actions to take some cards. I felt like having the patriotism could be important, being able to build more military, and I will actually go for Napoleon this turn. Maria and Shakespeare at this point are not looking good leaders for me. then Nobel would probably be the best leader to get. Maybe I should leave myself open to him. Also, James Watt could be very fine, giving me some discounts for selective breeding, maybe also for one remaining coal upgrade or two even potentially. Maybe it's a mistake to commit to Napoleon now. But on the other hand, I gain the strongest. I know that the next event is the Crusades. I know that during those Age 2 events there's an international agreement coming with Napoleon. My chances to win those events are just increasing by quite a bit. Also, Napoleon is available now. Both wolvs and Gandin still need a new leader. The remaining leaders could be very heavily contested, and with that, with the Crusades being on top, with the international agreement coming, and also, I mean, with having those wars in hand, you know, who knows if I can maybe go for an interesting war at some point. I made the decision to go for Napoleon here, give up on Nostradamus, but while I don't get culture from Nostradamus, I will get some additional culture from the Crusades, hopefully, and also I can keep more cards in hand, so I go for Napoleon, and then with the remaining two civil actions, I take actually the Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty is of course not ideal, it's quite expensive. I ideally want to at least get one more coal upgrade going before I will finish the statue. But it could also be really helpful, because at this point I don't know when the second copy of selective breeding will be available. That was the risk of me skipping the first copy at the turn before. And if it is late, then it could be that when the age will end, I will lose 2 yellow tokens, and out of the sudden I will have an uprising issue, I will have famine issues, and that could be really problematic. And now with the statue, I have a way to fix both of those things, and in general just help me out with the amount of population that I'm generating. So that's quite expensive. At least there's still a copy of Engineering Genius in the deck that maybe I can secure myself, and then I was hoping that it could be fine at the end. It could be that I don't have enough science to get into an Age 3 government form, so culture production won't be too big, but also I didn't really see how I can invest my civil actions differently in an efficient way. So at the end I just took Napoleon, took the patriotism, took the statue, and at the next turn maybe I can go for another coal upgrade and hopefully then finish the statue in time, or maybe also get some selective breeding upgrades going quickly in case I have the option. I keep one type of each war, and then I draw some more cards. Wolf Seeds opens the Crusade, so I gain some additional culture. Wolves will lose some additional culture. He will go for his second coal upgrade, actually goes for Maria Theresa. I thought that he might go for her. She will help him getting additional science, which he really needs, and also the resource should be useful for him. He takes the Republic, and maybe he can do a revolution at the next turn. Now it's Gandin's turn. He seeds. No international agreement is revealed yet, instead the arms industry. Each player gets 2 resources out of that. Gandin this turn can go for the Conmon, finishes the Suez Canal, and I was not happy to see what he will colonize with it, because it is actually the autonomous territory. He takes 4 signs from it. I think it's very helpful for him. He is now sitting at a lot of civil and military actions that will give him a clear advantage over me. I mean, Wolves, if he does a revolution, has also 7 civil actions, but he has some other issues. So I felt like, yeah, as I was already fearing when Gandin took the Suez Canal, that maybe that will put him a little bit ahead. He has already the culture lead, has now the most resource production, has the most actions, and I was a bit worried on where this game is going, in the sense what Gandin is building up. And then I have Gandin has 2 civil actions left. He will go for an upgrade, develops the British Circuses. There's the chance maybe that the age could end, and so he probably wants to make sure that that is out of his hand. If he is afraid of the age ending, maybe he could have also just used the Urban Growth to build one, but maybe he also wasn't really afraid that the age will end and just wanted to play his actions efficiently. Because there's a good chance that Wolves might just do a revolution, so there's just a good chance that he might get another Age 2 turn. At my turn, I first thought that I might not want to use my politics phase. A war is not that easily possible. I can't easily go for a war. An aggression is likely, or is definitely not successful. And the only event that I can push is to develop territory, another colony. Wolves has the big colonization bonus. Gandin has the Suez Canal, so I don't really like putting this colony into the deck. But I thought about this turn, I thought about my next turn, and I thought that it could just be a lot more beneficial for me if the international agreement is revealed now instead of it being revealed after my turn. I could really get some nice value out of it. I could take a bunch of yellow cards. I could with taking cards, let other cards fall down on cheaper on the row. I actually didn't remember exactly how I planned on taking which cards, which maybe is an indicator that sadly the international agreement is not revealed. But this turn I will not that nicely be able to prepare myself to gain again that much value out of the international agreements. I was really hoping that it might be revealed. Sadly, it's the vast territory instead, which wolvs is able to win. I was willing to bid an army and both colonization cards, and I was at least happy to see that Gandin doesn't win it. He has the Suez Canal. He's the player that is where it looks like he has the better position at the moment. So I rather would like to see wolvs winning that, even though of course with Maria getting this vast territory is extremely strong for him. Wolves at least has to send a whole legion tactic. Now it's my turn. I really need the selective breeding, and I could play things here in a bit of different ways. I could start with some food production, but the thing is that doesn't really work that nicely, because even if I go for 2 upgrades, I will have 4 food at the next turn, and when I lose the 2 yellow tokens, which is certainly possible that the age will end, then I don't have enough food to increase my population, meaning I will have an uprising issue, and if I spend 8 resources now into the selective breeding, then I don't have enough resources to build a statue at the next turn unless I take the reserves. But that would be a bit of a clunky turn, and so instead I made a decision to only take the selective breeding in hand, go actually for 2 coal upgrades, so that at least I have some strong production going, hoping that at some point might give me maybe a little bit of an advantage, now being 2 production ahead of Gandin. And then with the remaining 3 civil actions, I take the engineering genius for 3, which is expensive, but compared to taking the reserves now and then playing it for resources, it is still more efficient, gives me 1 resource more for the same civil action cost, and it just makes sure that I can finish the statue the next turn, and with that avoid any famine and uprising issues. I also thought about taking urban growth and reserves or something. But the thing is, the international agreement is now still on top, so I kind of wanted to play a turn where I have a bit more hand space. Maybe I could have, instead of taking the engineering genius, taken the reserves, getting that slightly less effective deal than the engineering genius, with the plan of playing it for resources the next turn, and then maybe developing the selective breeding, having more space in my hand. Maybe that is an option that I didn't consider that much, actually. I thought about developing the selective breeding. Maybe that could have been an interesting alternative here. I'm just making sure that I have space for 3 cards instead of only for 2. But of course I would already miss out on 1 resource, and so at the end I went with the engineering genius, at least having space to take 2 cards if I want to. But yeah, I really would have liked to already win the international agreement. Sadly, it's now the last card in the deck. At the end of my turn, I think I make a mistake here when discarding cards, because I looked at Wolf's turn and I thought he will certainly rebuild his whole Legion tactic. He will get Colossus draws, and maybe it's not that likely that I will get an aggression off, and I just kept both of those wars. But the wars are also not cards that I maybe have a good chance to deploying, so I think I should have just stayed more flexible. I should have kept 1 war, 1 aggression, because I know that there are some more colonies coming, and depending on when those are revealed, there's certainly the chance that I could at some point get a shot at a successful aggression, so I think it was a mistake to discard the raid here. I will draw some events, the Prosperity and the Independence Declaration, also the Hussar tactic, which could potentially be interesting. Wolves opens the international agreement, so at my next turn I can potentially take some cards. He will build a second lab for free with the urban growth, at least get a bit of additional science production going, increases population 3 times, and rebuilds his whole legion tactic, gets out of corruption like that, is safe from aggression like that, and yeah, so that seems like a very logical turn. And at the next turn, if he increases his population a bunch of times, he might even be able to go for Republic peacefully. Gandin seeds and my developed territory is revealed immediately. I was willing to bid quite a bit. I think even an army, a knight, and another knight, and 2 cards. Maybe a bit too expensive, but I also just wanted to push the price, and I felt like the 5 signs could be extremely valuable for all of the players. And which I also was a reason why I didn't like putting that event into the deck. At the end, I was again fine with the outcome. At least Gandin is not the one winning that colony, making his Suez Canal not even bigger. And wolvs again has to send a legion tactic away. And now I really was a bit angry with myself for having discarded the aggression, because now I could just play a raid against wolvs, which should have a very high chance of success. It's not too bad though, because I also have the chance to take the international agreement at my next turn, so I can also just get some additional actions, some additional value out of those actions, and wolves doesn't have the biggest buildings to raid, so I don't get that many resources, and also he still looks like he has a bit of a tough position. Of course, he will get lots of value out of Maria, so his position should not be underestimated, but still he has some issues, and I felt like the damage that I do to him is not that important in the situation, so at the end, maybe I would have even still taken the international agreement, but having the option could have been very nice, and maybe there could have been another chance to go for an aggression at a future turn. Gandin will go for Nobel. I think the additional science production will be extremely helpful for him. Then he goes for scientific method, actually builds an additional one, builds a bread and circuses, gets out of corruption, and then takes those 2 yellow cards. A very strong turn by him. Already we can see how valuable it is for him to have 7 civil actions ongoing, and I was really afraid because his economy is booming now. I at least have strong production, but it will take some time until I get my food production going. I'm still low in science production, and Gandin is the player who has the culture lead. At least his production is now dropped a bit because of losing Jan Shishka, but nonetheless I was a bit worried on my chances of finishing before Gandin here. With taking that many cards, he makes sure that the age will end. That means that wolves will draw some cards from age 3 with the Colossus, so he would have had a chance at least to defend against potential aggression. Now that I don't have an aggression, I at the end made a decision to use the international agreement instead of a politics phase, taking the efficient upgrade and the revolutionary idea. The efficient upgrade will basically also translate into additional food, because it will allow me to finish the statue, which is something that I just have to do to avoid uprising issues. And then I have 1 resource left, and now with the efficient upgrade I can already go for the selective breeding, at least get 2 food production going, and then I have 2 civil actions left, which I will spend to take the reserves and a second copy of Rifleman. So overall a relatively clean turn. I have no more food production going, I have the Statue of Liberty finished, and I have another military tech to be as flexible as possible for the military as well as the reserves, so that's at least fine. I will be at 34 cultures. 16 culture is a gap that is where it is possible to overcome it, so it might be a challenge, but certainly not impossible. Keep my cards, 1 event and a Hussars tactic. I actually draw 2 colonization cards and an impact, which is maybe not too great to see it with Gandin having that many actions, but I really felt like those cards could turn out to be quite nice, because one of the cards that is coming here is the historic territory, and if I'm able to win that relatively cheaply with that many cards, then the culture gap to Gandin is almost closed already, and that could be really important. So I was quite happy about seeing those colonization cards, and I was hoping that the historic territory will be revealed soon now. wolvs at his turn offers me the international trade agreement, which I accept. And then he will go for the Republic. He has gained some additional science from the developed territory, so he doesn't even need to increase his population 3 times in order to be able to go for the Republic. He will increase his population a bunch of times, rebuilds the Legion tactic again. We have seen this before. And then is it 15 strength. He has only 3 actions now after the uncertain border. The open borders agreement has been cancelled, so there's a chance that he could be vulnerable to an aggression, but he also had some additional draws and didn't deploy that many H2 cards yet, so he might be able to defend himself here. Now it's Gandin's turn. He goes for another upgrade with the efficient upgrade that he took at a turn before, takes the cannons, develops the cannons, disbands the warrior, builds the cannon, has the mobile artillery tactic going up to 19 strength, and takes the revolutionary idea, so he has now a good way to get more strength going. Now it is my turn, and as I said, I really hope to reveal a colony now, and so I was willing to push. I wasn't willing to push the impact of government, because Gandin has a lot of actions, but he has neither Or he has no blue tech that gives him additional action, so he can easily take civil service or military theory and gain an even bigger impact of government. Of course, maybe I can somehow have a chance at getting into H3 government form, but I have a lot less science, so I rather see that the independence declaration, at least for the moment, I don't have a colony. Hopefully I will have one at a time when it will be revealed, because I want to win the historic territory too, but I was hoping maybe that I can avoid being the weakest. So I pushed the independence declaration, and there's no colony revealed, but at least a strength event that I can take advantage of. I can even decide what to take, and in a game where I am and also wolves are still very low in science, I made a decision to take science from him. I also thought about food, which hurts him a bit with Maria, and also I could maybe use the food quite nicely, but at the end I just felt like additional science is maybe the most important thing to take here. I will go for my second farm upgrade, having some very solid food production ongoing right now. I actually take the urban growth, an efficient yellow card. I could now just play the revolutionary idea, make space in my hand, take the patriotism, but I didn't like that line too much, because that would mean having a full hand. It would mean spending a lot of civil actions and just taking some cards, and I think it could be important in the future turns to have some actions to deploy my resources and put them in something nice. Ideally, it would maybe be a multimedia, giving me culture and science production, maybe also computers, maybe movies. So I wanted to be prepared for that, and so I spent just my civil actions effect on my own civilization with the last 3 actions, playing the revolutionary idea, playing reserves for food, increasing my population, with that getting out of corruption again, and now I have a free population, I have space in my hand. If something like multimedia is on the road the next turn, I can take it, develop it, build one with the urban growth, and hopefully improve my position. While the hussars tactic could be nice for me, now that Gandin has revealed the mobile artillery tactic, I didn't feel that it is very important to keep it in hand, and instead I just wanted to keep all of my colonization cards to maximize my chances for the historic territory. And with that I also was willing to discard the impact of government. As you can see, I draw even another colonization card. Sadly no impact to push, so if the colony isn't revealed before my next turn, sadly I can't push another event to make sure that it is revealed. But a hybrid war can of course sometimes be interesting. Wolf seeds, and there is another colony revealed that I didn't have knowledge about, the inhabited territory too. And I didn't go all in here. I actually bid 1 unit and 4 of my cards, which is already a lot of course. And I do think it could also be a useful territory to win, but I didn't want to bid all cards, because then I would be in danger of an aggression from Gandin if I win it. And also I was hoping that at the end I might not be able to win it, because the more important colony, I thought, is the historic territory 2, the 11 culture, in the situation where all players have relatively low culture production, in a game where the culture scores at the end might be relatively low. I think the historic territory will be extremely important. Maybe I should have even bid less, but at the end, luckily I don't win it, and I can keep all of those cards available for this historic territory 2. The thing is, if Gandin doesn't see it, or if it is the last card in the deck, then I am not able to deploy all of those cards and have to discard one of them, which is why at the end I was willing to bid a little bit, because at the end maybe winning the inhabited territory for cheap is still better than winning no colony. But the ideal scenario for me would be to win the historic territory. At the end again, Wolves wins it again for Legion tactic. It's quite funny, for the 3rd time in a row Wolves has sent all of his whole Legion tactic away. He rebuilt quite a bunch of times. It's just sending Legion tactics on new colonies that he discovers. So quite a bit funny. But now he will make a bit of a change. Now the time of the legions is over, and the time of the rockets will begin. He has enough science to go into rockets thanks to Maria. Will build a bunch of them. Will build a swordsman. With building all of those units, he makes sure that he can defend himself against an aggression. He has only 1 card in hand, and it looks like maybe that one is not a colonization card, or he just didn't want to risk losing the colonization card, and then he takes the reserves, interestingly, over the patriotism. But maybe he didn't find. No, he could have increased population, take the patriotism. It's interesting that he takes the reserves, but maybe he wants to be more flexible and doesn't want to be forced using that card on the military. But I mean, additional military actions could also be quite fine. So interesting that he commits to the reserves here instead of the patriotism. Now it's Gandin's turn. He seeds, And I was very, very happy to see that the historic territory is actually revealed. I think I was willing to bid an army in all of my cards. It would of course be expensive, but I think I need to win this 11 culture. With that I'm getting really close to Gandin, and maybe then I can just stay in touch with him and somehow maybe overtake him at the end. And I win it for 12, which is even relatively cheap. And with that, I just sent a warrior away and 4 cards. I can even keep 1 card in hand. I could have also sent a knight away, and then I could have kept an H3 instead of an H2 colonization card in hand. But the thing is, my plan was to transition into the mobile artillery tactic, and with that, I just rather wanted to send a warrior away, and I was very happy being able to win this colony for that cheap. So seeding it into the deck at the end worked out quite fine for me, with being lucky of drawing that many cards. Gandin takes the air forces, increases his population, builds another cannon, takes the patriotism, the military theory, and with that he is putting some military pressure on me and Wolves, because he has enough science to go for both air forces and military theory. He has the resources to at least build a cannon and an air force if he is willing to play both patriotism and reserves, then even 2 air forces, so he can go for plus 20, plus 25 strength potentially, which would put him at 52. He would have the military actions to do all of that, so yeah, now I have to be quite careful about it. I will respond to that with going for a cannon. As you can see, there is actually a multimedia on the row. I would have loved to just build a multimedia now, but Gandin placed it very nicely. Didn't have really a way to improve his position in sense of culture production, so he instead put some pressure on us, and with that made sure that at least we also can't easily go for more culture production here and have to respond to his strength push. And yeah, so I can't really go into the multimedia. Instead, I go into the cannons, starting my transition into the mobile artillery. I play the patriotism, I build a cannon, I build even another cannon, copy the tactic, making me the strongest. I don't have knowledge about the last event, but it could be a strength event. And then with the remaining 3 actions, I could just take a copy of reserves, which could be nice to have, but I kind of wanted to take this copy of military theory to maybe remain with chances to use the hybrid war at some point, which could still be quite interesting. And then I also interestingly took the communism in hand. Of course, it's a bit questionable. I also thought about the fundamentalism. When thinking about those two, I mainly thought about a revolution, but a revolution to communism is cheaper. And yeah, of course, it's not that likely that I will be able to do a revolution. There's often too much to do in H3, but if there is a turn where maybe I think the things that I can do are not that interesting, then I think a revolution to communism could be quite interesting. I would increase my culture production by 2 thanks to the Statue of Liberty. I would have 2 more civil, 2 more military actions, 1 additional resource production, so while the revolution turn in itself would be somewhat weak, I at least would set myself up quite nicely for the last 2 or 3 turns, or how many there will be remaining at that point. So I thought it could be interesting to have it in hand. The revolution to fundamentalism is just a bit more expensive. My science production will be reduced, so after that I can't really easily go for more technologies, so I rather wanted to have the communism as an option to do a revolution. And then with the last action I could have just taken the fundamentalism in hand as well, but I felt like I need to improve something of my civilization, and even though it costs me a draw, I was willing to disband 1 warrior and use this urban growth to build an alchemy, at least going up to 4 science production, making sure that I actually have enough science to go for the military theory at the next turn. I can at the next turn build a cannon for 5, I have still 9 resources left, which means I can build another army and I can go for the military theory. That will be enough to defend myself. And so I felt like building that alchemy should be quite strong, even though, of course, if I still end up going for multimedia, then maybe that commitment could be quite bad. But at this point, Gandin, with having still the ability to easily build 2 cannons, a bunch of air forces, I felt like it will be easy for him to keep a lot of pressure, and then it's maybe unrealistic anyway to get into multimedia. So I respond to the strength push of Gandin in a relatively nice way, but I don't really get a lot of nice stuff going for myself, and what is especially bad, I don't draw any cards. I have no impact in hand. I will again get no impact. I don't know what can I prepare towards, and so I was a bit skeptical about the position. But on the other hand, after having won the historic territory 2, after my turn I will only be 5 culture behind Gandin, so it's really close, and maybe depending on when the wonders will drop and stuff like that, I definitely could have a chance to at some point get an edge. Now it's Wolf's turn. He will use Maria's resource to build another rocket. Maria has produced him some enormous amount of value during this game, and helped him a lot to stay competitive with maybe a lot of weaknesses that he otherwise had. And then he will build another rocket, making sure again that he can defend himself, even with maybe that not being a defense card. Takes the reserves, takes the efficient upgrade, increases his population. In hindsight, I mean, the reserves, of course, made him more flexible. Maybe he had a specific reason in mind why he wanted to use it, but he could have taken the patriotism for cheaper and already would have been one civil action ahead, would have gotten one more draw now. So I think in hindsight that ended up being a mistake. Now it's Gandin's turn. He is the weakest. He makes the decision to not push. He will go for Einsteins. There will be Nobel Prizes. Sadly, he has a lot of science saved up, and also he has some nice technologies to invest into. He will go for the civil service. He will play the revolutionary idea, go for the military theory, has his first Nobel Prize, scores 6 culture with Einstein. I was not happy to see that. Has now potentially a very big impact of progress, and then goes for upgrade, which allows him to increase his population at the next turn, as well as another arena. Now it is my turn. I can't really use my politics phase. Wolves could potentially have mechanized army tactic and then could go for cavalryman and build 2, reveal the tactics. So I can't really go for a war. And aggression, I think, is also doesn't make a lot of sense. And so I just skip my politics phase. And I will start by increasing my population and building 1 more cannon, getting me out of corruption, making myself the strongest again, using the 1 free military action that I'm having. And what I could do now would be to take the air forces in the revolutionary idea, which sadly doesn't allow me. I'm missing 1 science to go for both air forces and military theory at the next turn, but going for those 2 cards would allow me to go for all of those cards in 2 turns. I have this hybrid war, maybe also draw a normal war over culture, and I would maybe be able to build 3 air forces, and it could be somewhat fine. But I did some calculations and I was not convinced about this move, because I will lose Napoleon, which will cost me a lot of strength at a time when I can deploy the war. If I only have the hybrid war, then I could actually have some happy face issues for my own with this war. And so I just felt like going for a war won't be enough, and maybe especially not to win the game, because Gandin, with having air forces in hand, I think can very nicely make sure to defend himself. Maybe I can actually get a successful war against wolves, depending heavily on whether he has a nice tactic to work with, but worst case he can always try copying the mobile artillery tactic, which is not easy for him because of his low military actions, but possible. And I felt like the war won't be big, and then I gain a little bit of culture. It might be good against wolves, maybe if he has the right tactic, it might even also not really work against wolves, and then it might just be not enough to win the game. And with my position in the standings, I think I just need to try winning the game. And so instead of the air forces and trying something with the military, I went with the fast food chains here. When we take a look at the remaining wonders, there's now only the Empire State Building left, meaning, and it is a wonder that maybe Gandin can make work, but it's not easily possible. And so maybe with the fast food chains, I will be the only one who can finish a good wonder, and maybe that can give me the culture that I need to overtake Gandin. So I thought about just taking air forces to have them in hand, because maybe I will be a bit in trouble if Gandin follows up with some military. But I was hoping that with military theory and the ability to potentially just at least threaten to build more armies, I will be somewhat fine. And so I just thought I need to take that risk. So I get stronger, get out of corruption, take the fast food chains, and then I have 1 civil action left. And for that 1 civil action, I think there are 3 cards that I could consider. Of course, there are also 2 leaders, but Gandhi doesn't really make me safe from Gandin, because he has that many military actions and a patriotism in hand. And Sid Meier without computers is just not that great, so I didn't really want to get one of those leaders. Maybe a mistake, maybe I should actually just take Gandhi here just for the 2 culture production and to be at least a little bit safer, just in case wolves somehow tries to do something. And yeah, also one reason that I forgot to talk about when I took military theory in communism earlier, a small part about taking communism was also to deny every chance or every option of wolves to get more military actions, because fundamentalism was discarded and now both military theories and communism are out, so he's stuck on 3 military actions, because I felt like he's a bit in a desperate position. One out for him could be military, and if he has the right tactic he could actually get dangerous, and so I denied him this option, at least made it a lot more difficult to pull off. And yeah, so maybe I should have thought more about Gandhi here, just because 2 culture production from now on is somewhat fine, and is maybe better than waiting for one of those leaders, even though, for example, if I get Pierre at the second last turn, then I still get 8 just for the Olympic Games, so I think it's also fine to not go for those, but maybe I should have thought a little bit more about taking Gandhi, maybe even Sid Meier, dropping down in science, but having some potential if I should get computers, but the science might also be still somewhat valuable. Maybe I at least can somehow manage to get one Nobel Prize, or threaten at least to get some technologies going. I thought about taking the multimedia, just making sure that I have a nice urban building to invest into. Especially while movies could also be somewhat fine. At the next turn, I could develop multimedia, build one, and then still have enough science to go for military theory, but the same is not true if I develop movies. Then I would be missing 1 science and 2 turns to go for military theory, so if I have a choice, the multimedia would be the card that I prefer. But if I also want to finish the fast food chains, I just need a lot of resources, and I also found it very unrealistic to make this commitment to urban building very at the next turn already, as likely Gandin will still be somewhat threatening. And so in the end, I just took the urban growth. Tanks could also be considered. Now that I don't take air forces, at least I can threaten a mechanized army. But I was at the end willing to take that risk to be a bit less flexible in regards of the tactics. It's the last copy of tanks, but instead just grab the urban growth, which hopefully will allow me to build something more. Maybe it will make the difference of being able to go for something like multimedia or movies at the end. And so I just at the end took this yellow card. I was really hoping that I get a nice draw, and I do get a fine one, I would say. Impact of agriculture is relatively neutral, but I have something to push, and having something to push will give me 3 culture, and in a low culture game like that, it might already be nice. And the impact of happiness, maybe I can make big. Maybe I can use the urban growth to build another organized religion, and at the moment, Gandin doesn't have that many happy faces, wolves has even very few, so I was somewhat happy about this draw. Wolves will this turn go for the cavalryman, builds one, builds another one, and he has actually the mechanized army tactic. Won't get an. He really didn't have a lot of draws after he won or got the ones from the Colossus. But he's now at 54 strength, and he still could have an aggression, so I have to be a bit careful about that. And yeah, so he just first of all makes sure that he's safe and maybe puts a bit of pressure on me and Gandin. And then he has still some actions left. He takes Sid Meier, the efficient upgrade, revolutionary idea, computers, and at the next turn maybe plans with the 2 efficient upgrades to get into Sid Meier relatively cheaply. He doesn't take the Air Force, but he doesn't really have the science for them anyway. Gandin this turn goes for satellites. Could be an indicator that the impact of progress is coming. However, he didn't push this turn, maybe being afraid of a potential strength event. If the impact of progress should be coming, that could be bad news for me, because that would be a very big impact for Gandin. He goes for the Air Forces this turn, plays the Patriotism, disbands the Knight, interestingly, builds 2 Air Forces, goes up to 49 strength, takes the Revolutionary idea and the computers. And with that taking that many cards, he will actually make it very likely that his next turn will be his last one, meaning that my next turn will now be my second last turn, very likely. And at my turn, I just need to start pushing, and I didn't want to push the impact of happiness because it's a bit unclear how good that will be, and sadly one of the events that I pushed earlier could now bite me a little bit, because there's the historic territory, there's the independence declaration coming, which could cost me the historic territory, which could make the impact of happiness quite bad, so I think the impact of agriculture is just a safer event to push first. And there's no strength event, but still an event that is a bit annoying for me, the terrorism. Wolves has the least culture, and at his turn he will very likely now destroy my organized religion, which will make it quite a bit harder for me to see this impact of happiness. Generally will hurt my position a bit. Gandin, of course, will also lose a building, but maybe losing the scientific method is not too bad for him, unless he has specific impacts for that, but so far there haven't been a lot of impacts seeded, and maybe he will also just lose a bread and circuses, in which case he lost a building that is a lot cheaper, so I was not too happy to see this terrorism, and I was now even more happy that I didn't commit to the impact of happiness already, because that might be a bit dangerous to pull off now, so I wasn't really happy about seeing this terrorism. But maybe it was also a bit lucky, of course, that it stayed in the deck for so long. It maybe could have done even some bigger damage if it would have been reviewed early on. So from Wolf's perspective, if he probably was the one who seeded it, and he probably needed to wait quite long because there was not a lot of seeding going on. Now it is my turn, and it was a bit of a decision what leader I want to go for. Churchill could give me 3 culture this and the next turn, so just in perspective of culture, Pierre will give me more with the Olympic Games, with there being a small danger that maybe if Gandin seeds at this turn and at exact that moment Iconoclasm will be revealed, I don't have the chance to get the Olympic Games, but at least that would also mean that Gandin maybe doesn't get 2 techs, which he can go for at the moment with Einstein, so he would also lose a bit, so I think Pierre is just better in terms of culture. Churchill could help me a bit with building some military or something, but I felt like the additional resources that I gained from him do not make up for more than 5 cultures, so Pierre I think is the best choice. I will disband a warrior because I want to have it elsewhere. I will then elect Pierre, and at the moment I'm a bit vulnerable to an aggression. Wolves didn't have that many draws, but Gandin certainly could have an aggression, and so I wanted to build a bit more military. Maybe I should be a bit more greedy here, maybe I should just hope to not get hit by an aggression, but it could just also backfire very heavily, and at least I will get the Olympic Games, I will get the fast food chains, and my situation is maybe not that desperate that I need to take big risks. On the other hand, I will lose the organized religion to the terrorism, so it's certainly not looking great. I don't know if I get another nice impact. There are some impacts that could be really bad for me, like technology, progress, science, strength, culture probably as well, depending on, I mean, at the moment every player has a very small culture production, but Wolves will soon gain more with Sid Meier. So there are a lot of bad impacts, not really that great ones for me. Maybe I should already take some risks, hoping that Wolves doesn't have an impact in hand, or no aggression in hand, and that Gandin, who hasn't seeded any impact yet, maybe if he could go for an aggression, but if he could also seed a somewhat fine impact instead, maybe he doesn't want to go for an aggression, and maybe that could allow myself to actually take the risk of potentially getting hit by an aggression here. But I mean, in the game before, I took that risk multiple times in the game that you saw before on the channel, and there that didn't really work very well. But maybe it could have been an idea here, because if I don't spend 8 resources on another army, which I will now, I can maybe just generally set myself up better for impacts and get a better score potentially out of at the end if I don't get punished. Wolves investing that heavily into strength could of course be an indicator that he has an aggression. So during the game I decided to play it safe and not take the risk of getting hit by an aggression. I went for the military theory, and then I built a cannon, a knight, going up to 45 strength, and then I will take the endowment and get out of corruption with the fast food chains. Wolves doesn't have enough military actions to really go for a war, so I don't have to be too careful about building strength. Just building 1 army should be enough. And at the next turn I could finish the fast food chains, and with the urban growth that I took I have just enough to rebuild the organized religion, which is not great, and I was also afraid that the historic territory might be revealed before my next turn, which could really cost me some happy face issues. I would basically lose all of my happy face sources, the organized religion and the historic territory before my next turn, and it could be quite annoying, and then of course I really can't see the impact of happiness. But I was hoping that maybe I will draw another impact that I can see at my next turn. Sadly no impact. At least the peace treaty could give me and Wolves 1 culture, so I could maybe gain 1 culture against Gandin. Wolves doesn't have an aggression in hand, instead it's the military alliance, which he will sadly offer to Gandin. He will then play the revolutionary idea, will increase his population one last time, goes for the computers for 2 upgrades, will switch to Sid Meier and takes the engineering. He will get 1 time 3 draws. Now H4 starts. Gandin seeds. And I was not happy to see that the historic territory is revealed. A civil unrest could have been very big at this point. Not for me really, because I would have also lost quite a lot. But for wolves, I mean, it's also not that. But yeah, if one of the events would have been the civil unrest, that could have been really a way how wolves gets immediately back into the game. Sadly, the independence declaration is revealed first, meaning I will actually lose. This colony I probably wouldn't have ceded the impact of happiness anyway, because of the threat of the independence declaration being revealed. So then if it's revealed after my turn, it doesn't affect me. So I was a bit unhappy to see that indeed the independence declaration is revealed first. And I mean, it was ceded by me, and sadly at the end it hits myself. Gandin will develop the satellites, will also develop the professional sports for a Nobel Prize, and then he will build a religion, build another religion, and yeah, interestingly, just destroys a bunch of stuff. So it's a bit of an interesting turn by him, because instead of one of those religions, he could have, for example, just built a bread and circuses, and then he wouldn't need to destroy this mine. So he's actively destroying something in order to get another religion, and it doesn't even put him in a position where he's nicely prepared for happiness or something. So building a bread and circuses would be nice for architecture, competition, happiness, population. So maybe he has knowledge about some of those impacts, and generally there haven't been that many impacts seeded. But when we take a closer look, those religions are also nice for some impacts. The impact of balance gets better, and what maybe was at the end the reason for him to build that many religions is actually the impact of culture, because without that, maybe there's a risk that I could overtake him, especially if I have a pact like that in hand, and then maybe I could just build, for example, 2 religions, have this pact, and out of the sudden I have 4 culture reduction, and then if wolves, who has the most culture, sees the impact of culture, that could be a strong event for wolves, and also then for me. So maybe he wants to lock off the impact of culture. Now I can't really go for that if I want to also finish the fast food chains, and that probably is the reason why he went for those religions. Maybe he also said, there are not that many impacts, let's just maximize the pure amount of culture. But I think maybe building 1 arena instead and not having to destroy this mine instead of building 1 religion normally would have been the better choice, if it would not maybe make a difference for the impact of culture. Sadly, him getting another Nobel Prize is quite a bunch of culture for his Einstein, so he's now at 19 culture. With losing the historic territory, I can't really see the impact of happiness. I will actually have quite some trouble because of that during my turn. So instead I offered a peace treaty, which at least will also make it that I don't have to be in danger of an aggression if wolves accepts it. And I was confident that he will accept it, because I will now declare the Olympic Games, so an aggression against me would be quite painful for him anyway. But now I don't have to worry about it at all any longer. We both gain additional culture. I have the Olympic Games. I will start my turn by playing the endowment for 3 additional culture. And then I was looking at 2 main lines this turn. One could be to just now build the organized religion with the urban growth, finish the fast food chains, increase my population, disband 1 unit to not have an uprising, and that could be fine. But I have a different line where I gain 2 safe culture, but it costs me especially for 2 impacts. And at the end, that was the line that I went with. Partly also because there are not that many impacts seeded, and in such a situation, maybe getting save points is more valuable than otherwise. And so instead of building an organized religion, I actually only build a theology. I will disband a unit, build an additional farm that will give me +1, moving that from knights to the farm will give me +1. Sadly, I can't increase my population and build it because I don't have enough actions to do that. So it gives me +1 and then another +1 because I've seeded the impact of agriculture. And then I have just enough resources left to finish the fast food chains for 22. But now there's the downside of playing the turn like that, and I will disband a knight, and a cannon to not have an uprising. So I'm now very low in strength, but that is not a problem. I was the weakest anyway. There are two impacts mainly that I heard by this. One big one would of course be the impact of happiness, but that I have in hand. And then there's the impact of competition that is by -4 compared to the other turn. And then the impact of population, which is by -4 compared to the other turn. Also the impact of architecture is by -1, but if only that impact is in there, then of course getting the 2 safe cultures is of course better. So with only 2 impacts being not negatively affected by doing all of that, I thought that I just have to go for the safe culture here and try to maximize as many culture as I can. Even though I was a bit afraid that wolves, of course, could maybe seed the impact of competition or could have seeded it already. Of course, what cards he has now in hand is quite a bit random, as he just drew all of them at his last turn, but that could certainly be an impact that he could seed into the deck. And yeah, but at least I will, after my turn, be at 94 cultures. I will go into the final impacts with the lead. The problem is that there are quite some strong impacts for Gandin. He didn't seed for a long time, which gives me some hope that maybe he didn't have that he doesn't have has drawn one early, and that maybe he just didn't found any good impact and committed to maybe not so good one at his last turn. But I was a bit afraid that at the end he is just better prepared for impacts, and the 4 culture is really not a big lead. I will get +1 against him with the impact of agriculture, so at the moment 2 unknown impacts are in there, and I will be at a 5 culture lead before Gandin. Now it's Wolf's turn. He will seed, opens the freedom of movement. I was a bit unhappy because if that would have been revealed instead of the Independence Declaration, I could have done some nice stuff with it, which could have prepared me better for impacts and stuff. And now wolves will go for the engineering, will build a religion, builds a farm, also sets up nicely for impacts. Maybe impact of balance could be in there, maybe also impact of harmony. And that's the end of his turn. And before the final impacts, we can see that I have a small lead before Gandin, but there are quite a bunch of impacts that could punish me. And then there's Wolves, who is quite a bit behind, but also has some strong impacts. Impact of science would gain him a lot of points against me. Impact of culture as well. So there are not that many impacts coming, so it's tough for him. But it's not out of the question that he can still avoid finishing last here. The first impact is sadly already one that doesn't leave me with a lot of hope to overtake Gandin again. The impact of progress gives him +14 against me, and also Wolves is starting to catch up a bit. Then here we have my impact of agriculture, which at least gives me +1 against both of my opponents. Then we have the impact of harmony, which is also not really a great one for me, +20 for both of my opponents, only +12 for me. And then the last impact is the impact of architecture, which gives Gandin a bit more culture. Wolves again gets more out of it than me, and at the end I'm actually closer to Wolves than to Gandin, and Gandin wins it by a 19 culture lead. Yeah, so sadly at the end not the ideal result for me. Gandin being able to win that game, that will make it very tough for me when we just in a moment take a look at the standings. It was quite a military race at the beginning of the game. I went for Nostradamus. I knew that there are a lot of strength events coming. Every player did some sacrifices in order to not get hit by all of them. At the end, Wolves was the one who lost the strength race, and maybe that was already that big of a setback that it was difficult for him to come back. And I did get somewhat, while I didn't get hit by any of those events, I also didn't profit from any of them. Gandin won the border conflict, won the uncertain borders. He was the one who got some economy running first, and then I think the Suez Canal just gave him a very nice boost. And after that, I was afraid that his position might be too strong. But like maybe this game is again somewhat similar to the ones before, where I had a tough situation. I mean, in this game, both situation was even more tough, but then I did a somewhat nice effort in H3. Gandin nicely put some military pressure on me, making it that I can't easily invest into a big urban building. I had to respond to this, but nonetheless, I got a fast food chains to historic territory. I managed to make the gap quite close. I even went into the final impacts with the lead, but I just was too badly prepared for the impacts, and then Gandin is the winner, and I think he just also had the best position and played it very well. So, yeah, not an ideal outcome for me. But an interesting game with quite a strength race going on at the beginning. And yeah, with that game finished, we can now take a look at the standings and what the results means for the standings. And there was also another game that finished where I wasn't involved, and in that game Gandin again managed to win against wolvs and Tot Silence. So for Gandin, the second batch of games has been going quite nicely so far. He's even at the third position right now, being before Ipogi, who is at 10 points at the moment, but also has one less game finished. Tot Silence, with losing the game, he still is in the best position to win the league, but it could get closer again, and especially Ipogi could potentially overtake him again. Gandin could only tie with him, and I didn't check who would win the tiebreaker, but he at least can tie with him. And for me, of course, it's really looking quite bad now. I at least finished at the second position, and that was also important because if I would have lost the game, I already would have been, I think, relegated for certain. Now, at least, I still have some chances, but I need to win my 2 remaining games. If I win my 2 remaining games, I'm at 14 points. wolvs has now already all of his games finished, so if I manage to overtake him, he's behind me, and also then Gandin and hopefully Apogi, one of them should hopefully also be behind me. So Gandin is guaranteed to tie with me if I win my next 2 games. And also Ipogi, because Ipogi is involved in both of the next 2 games. So, if I win my next 2 games, I should stay in the league. If not, I'm out of the Grandmaster division. So, that's the situation. Not an easy situation for me, but there is still hope. And with that, I will try my best in the 2 remaining games. And I hope you're excited to see how this season continues. And with that, we are at the end of the video. I say thanks for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.